The twin suns of New Busan painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as they slowly set behind the golden wheat fields. It was harvest season on this small human colony world, and the air smelled of fresh grain and cooking food. Families gathered in their homes after long days of work, sharing meals and laughter. Children ran through the fields, playing games and chasing each other until their parents called them inside. Do-hyun stood on his porch and watched his daughter Yuna play with the neighbor's kids. She was only 8 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that could light up any room. He had retired from the military 5 years ago to give her a peaceful life, away from the wars and politics of the inner colonies. His wife Hana appeared beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. "Dinner is ready," she said softly. "Call her inside." Do-hyun nodded and whistled. Yuna looked up, waved goodbye to her friends, and ran toward the house. Her laughter echoed across the field as she jumped into her father's arms. He lifted her high and spun her around before setting her down. "Did you have fun today?" he asked. "Yes. We found a strange bug near the river. It had 6 legs and glowed in the dark." Do-hyun smiled and led his family inside. They ate dinner together, talking about simple things: the weather, the harvest, the upcoming festival. After dinner, Hana tucked Yuna into bed and sang her a soft lullaby. Do-hyun stood in the doorway and watched. This was everything he had ever wanted: peace, family, home. That night, while the colony slept, shadows moved across the sky. The Valori ships came without sound. They were long and silver, moving through the atmosphere like ghosts. The Valori were an old species, much older than humans. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes that showed no emotion. For centuries, they had studied other species across the galaxy. They captured, experimented, and learned. Most species feared them, but few dared to challenge them. They were protected by ancient treaties, and the Galactic Union looked the other way. The Valori had watched humans for decades. They found them fascinating. Humans were weak compared to other species. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. Yet somehow, they survived. They adapted. They spread across the stars faster than anyone expected. The Valori wanted to know why, and they believed the answer lay in human children. Young specimens, they thought, would be easier to study. Their minds were still forming. Their bodies were still growing. The Valori scientists believed they could unlock the secrets of human adaptability by examining the young ones. So they came to New Busan in the dead of night. Do-hyun woke to the sound of screaming. He jumped out of bed and grabbed the old rifle he kept in the closet. Hana was already running toward Yuna's room. The window was broken. Cold air rushed in. The bed was empty. "Yuna!" Hana screamed. Do-hyun ran outside. The sky was filled with silver ships. Beams of light shot down from them, pulling small figures up into the darkness. Children. They were taking children. He raised his rifle and fired, but the shots did nothing against the alien shields. All around him, parents were running, screaming, fighting with whatever they had. But it was useless. In less than an hour, it was over. The ships vanished into the night sky as quickly as they had come. Do-hyun fell to his knees in the middle of the field. His rifle dropped from his hands. Behind him, Hana collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing. 347 children were gone. 347 empty beds. 347 families destroyed in a single night. The colony governor sent out emergency teams to search for survivors and assess the damage. But there were no bodies to find, no wreckage to examine, only strange metallic residue and burn marks where the ships had landed. The Valori had been careful. They had been efficient. They had taken what they wanted and left nothing behind. Do-hyun sat in Yuna's room as the first sun rose. He held her favorite toy in his hands, a small stuffed rabbit she had named Bori. The sheets still smelled like her. He could not cry. He could not scream. He felt hollow, like something vital had been ripped out of his chest. Hana came and sat beside him. Her eyes were red and swollen. Do-hyun did not answer. He did not know. Hours later, the colony's communication officer managed to boost their signal strong enough to reach Earth. The message they sent was short. It did not need to be long. Every human who heard it understood immediately. This is New Busan Colony. We have been attacked. They took our children. Please, help us. The message traveled across space at the speed of light. It passed relay stations and communication hubs. It reached ships and stations and planets. Within hours, every human in the galaxy had heard it. And something changed. Something deep and old and dangerous woke up inside humanity. On Earth, military officers received the message and went silent. On Mars, factory workers stopped their machines and looked at each other with hard eyes. On distant colonies, farmers put down their tools and picked up weapons. Parents held their own children tighter and felt a cold rage building in their hearts. The Valori had made a terrible mistake. They had studied humans for decades, but they had missed the most important thing. They had seen humans fight wars over territory, resources, and politics. They had seen humans argue and divide and struggle against each other. But they had never seen what happened when someone touched their children. They were about to find out. Do-hyun stood up slowly. He placed Bori gently on Yuna's pillow and walked to the closet. Behind his old rifle was a locked box. He opened it and pulled out his military uniform. It still fit. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a soldier looking back. I am going to find her, he said quietly. I am going to bring her home. Hana nodded. There were no more tears in her eyes. Only fire. Across the galaxy, millions of humans were making the same promise. Admiral Salmon stood in the command center of the United Earth Fleet headquarters on Mars. The room was filled with officers, all staring at the same report on their screens. The silence was heavy. She had fought in 3 wars during her career. She had seen terrible things. But nothing had prepared her for this. 347 names. 347 faces. Children. All of them. The youngest was 4 years old. The oldest was 12. They had been taken from their beds in the middle of the night by a species that saw them as nothing more than research subjects. Salmon's hands trembled as she scrolled through the list. She was not a mother herself, but she understood what this meant. Every soldier in her command understood. This was not just an attack on a colony. This was an attack on humanity itself. Get me a line to Central Command, she said quietly, and prepare the fleet for mobilization. The officers moved without question. Within hours, every ship in the human military was on alert. But before any action could be taken, there was one thing that had to happen first: the diplomatic process. Ambassador Jiho arrived at the Galactic Union Council chamber 3 days after the attack. He was a calm man, known for his patience and careful words. He had spent 20 years building relationships with alien species, working to secure humanity's place in the galactic community. But as he walked into the Great Hall, something had changed in his eyes. The chamber was massive. Representatives from over 100 species sat in tiered rows, looking down at the central platform. The Valori ambassador was there too, sitting calmly in his seat as if nothing had happened. His gray face showed no expression. His black eyes reflected nothing. Jiho stepped onto the platform and waited for silence. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but cold. 3 days ago, ships belonging to the Valori Dominion entered human space without permission. They attacked a civilian colony called New Busan. They killed no one. They took nothing of value. They only took children, 347 of them. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others watched with curiosity. A few seemed almost bored. The council chairman, a large creature covered in blue scales, raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Ambassador Jiho, We understand your concern. However, the Valori Dominion is a protected member of this council. Any military action against them would be a violation of our charter. I am not here to ask permission for military action, Jiho replied. I am here to give you a chance to fix this before it becomes necessary. The chairman blinked his large eyes. What do you propose? Return our children within 3 standard cycles, all of them, unharmed. If you do this, we will consider the matter closed. If you do not, we will come for them ourselves. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The representative from the Gorvian Empire shook his head. Humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries. You have a small fleet and limited resources. You cannot seriously threaten the Valori Dominion. Jiho did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the Gorvian and said, You do not know us very well. The Valori ambassador finally spoke. His voice was thin and musical, like wind through broken glass. These specimens were collected for scientific purposes. Their study will benefit the entire galaxy. Surely you can see the greater good in this. Jiho stared at him for a long moment. Then he reached up and removed the diplomatic badge from his chest. He placed it carefully on the podium in front of him. There is no greater good that justifies taking children from their parents, he said. You have 3 cycles. After that, there will be no more talking. He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the alien delegates whispered to each other in confusion. Some were worried. Most were not. They had seen young species make threats before. Those species had always backed down when they realized the cost of war, but they had never seen humanity truly angry before. Back on Earth, the response was immediate. The president addressed the planet in a broadcast that reached every human settlement in the galaxy. Her words were simple. They took our children. We will bring them home. Every citizen who can serve, we ask you to serve. Every factory that can produce, we ask you to produce. This is not a war we chose, but it is a war we will win. And humanity answered. On the colony world of New Sol, young Tejo watched the broadcast in a crowded bar filled with off-duty soldiers. He was a captain, commanding a small destroyer called the Indomitable. He had never seen real combat. But when the broadcast ended, he stood up and walked straight to his ship. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, a brilliant engineer named Minji stopped her work on civilian technology and started studying Valori shield frequencies. She had lost her nephew in the attack. She would not rest until she found a way through their defenses. On a dozen worlds, intelligence operatives like Hyunwoo began infiltrating alien networks. They needed information. Where were the children being held? How many Valori ships guarded them? What were the weak points in their defenses? Retired soldiers put on their uniforms again. Factory workers took extra shifts. Scientists abandoned their research to work on weapons. Farmers sold their harvests to fund the war effort. Parents donated everything they could spare. The Galactic Union sent envoys to Earth, begging humanity to reconsider. They offered compensation. They offered new trade agreements. They offered a seat on the High Council. But the human response was always the same. Return our children. 3 cycles passed. The Valori did not respond. They believed humans were bluffing. They believed no species would risk total war over a few hundred children. On the 4th day, Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Eternal Vigil. Around her, thousands of human ships waited in formation near the Valori border, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. She opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was calm. Today, we do not fight for territory. We do not fight for power or resources. We fight for our children. They are waiting for us, and we will not let them down. Across the fleet, soldiers, engineers, pilots, and officers listened in silence. Many of them had children of their own. All of them understood what was at stake. The jump drives powered up. The stars stretched into lines of light. The war had begun. The human war machine woke from its long sleep. And the galaxy had never seen anything like it. Within 1 week of the announcement, every factory on Earth had converted to military production. Assembly lines that once made cars now built fighter craft. Plants that produced household items now manufactured ammunition. The change happened so fast that alien observers could not believe their sensors. On the colony world of New Incheon, Minji worked without sleep for 5 days straight. Her laboratory was filled with captured Valori technology from old battles, and she studied every piece with desperate focus. The Valori shields were legendary. No weapon in the galaxy could break through them easily. But Minji had a theory. Every shield had a frequency. Every frequency could be disrupted. She just needed to find the right pattern. On the morning of the 6th day, she finally cracked it. She stared at her screen with red eyes and a trembling smile. The Valori shields operated on a rotating frequency that changed every few seconds, but there was a gap. A tiny moment between rotations when the shield was weak. If human weapons could be timed to that gap, they could punch through. She sent her findings to Admiral Salmon immediately. Within hours, every ship in the fleet was being upgraded with the new targeting system. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo worked in the shadows. He was an intelligence operative, trained to move through enemy networks without being detected. For 2 weeks, he had been inside the Valori communication systems, reading their messages and tracking their movements. It was dangerous work. If they found him, he would be killed. But he did not care. His sister's daughter was one of the taken children. On the 15th day, he found what he was looking for. The children were being held on a space station deep inside Valori territory. It was called the Apex Laboratory, a massive research facility protected by the strongest shields and the largest fleet the Valori had. The Valori believed it was untouchable. They believed no enemy would ever reach it. Hyun-woo smiled when he read the reports. The Valori were arrogant. They had grown lazy after centuries of being feared. They did not patrol their borders carefully. They did not update their security codes often enough. And they had no idea that a human had been reading their messages for weeks. He sent the coordinates to Central Command and then disappeared into the darkness again. There was more work to do. Captain Taeho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the fleet assemble through the main viewport. He had never seen so many ships in one place. Thousands of them, ranging from massive dreadnoughts that stretched for kilometers to small, fast attack craft that could dance around enemy fire. Every ship had the same words painted on its hull in bright white letters. Bring them home. The crew of the Indomitable was young. Most of them had never seen combat. But there was no fear in their eyes. Only determination. Captain, his second officer said, we have received new orders. We are assigned to the assault group. We will be part of the first wave. Taeho nodded slowly. The first wave would face the heaviest resistance. Many ships would not survive. He looked around the bridge at his crew and felt a strange sense of calm. Prepare the ship for combat, he said, and make sure everyone gets a good meal tonight. Tomorrow, we fight. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Union watched in growing alarm. They had seen wars before. They had seen species fight over planets and resources and ancient grudges. But they had never seen anything like this. Human colonies were emptying out. Not because people were fleeing, but because they were joining the war effort. Farmers left their fields. Teachers left their schools. Doctors packed their equipment and headed for military hospitals. Even criminals in prison were volunteering to fight. The council chairman sent a desperate message to Earth. This is madness. You cannot win this war. The Valori have 10 times your military strength. They have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Please, reconsider. The response came from Admiral Salmon herself. We will not stop until our children are safe. If you want to help, stay out of our way. The Valori High Command received reports about the human mobilization and felt only mild amusement. Yes, the humans were gathering ships. Yes, they were making weapons. But so what? The Valori had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. They had never lost a war. Lord Vareth, the Valori Supreme Commander, looked at the human fleet on his tactical display and shook his head. Let them come. Our shields will hold. Our ships are superior. They will break against us like waves against rock. His advisors agreed. The humans were emotional creatures, driven by primitive instincts. They would make mistakes. They would fight. Without strategy. They would die. But one advisor, an old scientist named Seleth, was not so sure. He had studied humans longer than anyone else. He had watched them build their civilization from nothing. He had seen them survive disasters that should have destroyed them. My lord, he said carefully, perhaps we should not underestimate them. They are not like other species. They do not think the way we do. Vareth turned his cold black eyes toward the old scientist. What do you mean? I mean that they are not fighting for territory or power. They are fighting for their children. Among humans, this is the strongest motivation possible. They will not stop. They will not surrender. They will keep coming until they have what they want, or until they are all dead. Vareth considered this for a moment, then dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Then they will all be dead. The experiment must continue. The specimens are too valuable. Seleth bowed and said nothing more. But as he left the command center, he felt a strange emotion he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. On the human flagship, Admiral Salmon reviewed the battle plans one final time. The attack would happen in 3 phases. First, the main fleet would engage the Valori defense forces and draw their attention. Second, a smaller strike team would slip through the chaos and reach the Apex laboratory. Third, ground troops would board the station and rescue the children. It was a simple plan. Simple plans worked best in war. She looked at the faces of her officers and saw her own feelings reflected in their eyes. Worry, determination, and something else. Something fierce and old and impossible to name. This is for our children, she said quietly. This is for every parent who woke up to an empty bed. This is for every family that was torn apart. We will bring them home. All of them, no matter the cost. The officers saluted in perfect unison. At exactly 0600 hours on the 20th day after the attack, the human fleet jumped into Valori space. The war had truly begun. The Valori sensors detected the human fleet 3 seconds before it arrived. That was not enough time to prepare. The sky above the Veil Nebula exploded with light, as thousands of human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They came in tight formation, weapons already charging, shields already raised. The Valori defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Admiral Salmon gave only one order: attack. The first wave of human ships hit the Valori lines like a hammer. The new targeting systems that Minji had developed worked perfectly. Human weapons found the gaps in Valori shields and punched through. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Valori ships that had never known defeat suddenly found themselves burning. Captain Tejo guided the Indomitable through the chaos with steady hands. Enemy fire streaked past his ship, missing by meters. He could see Valori cruisers ahead, trying to form a defensive line. Target the lead ship, he ordered. Fire everything we have. The Indomitable's weapons roared. Missiles and energy beams crossed the void and struck the enemy cruiser at the exact moment its shields flickered. The Valori ship broke apart in a ball of fire. Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated again and again. Human ships moved with a coordination that the Valori had never faced before. They protected each other, covered each other, sacrificed themselves for each other. When one ship fell, 2 more took its place. Lord Vareth watched the battle from his command ship and felt something he had never experienced in his long life. Doubt. How is this possible? He demanded. Their ships are weaker than ours. Their weapons are inferior. How are they winning? His officers had no answer. They could only watch as the mighty Valori fleet was torn apart piece by piece. While the main battle raged, a small group of ships slipped away from the fighting. They were fast and quiet, designed for stealth rather than combat. Do-hyun was aboard the lead ship, wearing his old combat armor and carrying enough weapons to fight an army. He was not alone. With him were 200 of the best soldiers humanity had. Many of them were parents of the missing children. All of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not come back. The stealth ships reached the Apex laboratory without being detected. The station was massive, a sprawling complex of metal and glass that floated in the darkness like a poisonous spider. Guard ships circled it constantly, but they were looking outward, toward the battle. They never saw the human ships approaching from below. Prepare for boarding, Do-hyun said quietly. Remember the mission. Find the children. Protect them at all costs. The ships attached to the station's hull and cut through. Alarms began to wail inside the laboratory, but it was too late. Human soldiers poured through the breach, moving fast and hitting hard. The Valori guards were not prepared for close combat. They were scientists, not warriors. They fell quickly as the humans advanced through the corridors. Do-hyun led the way, his rifle cutting down every enemy that appeared before him. The station was a maze of laboratories and holding cells. Every room contained something terrible. Equipment designed for experiments that no sane mind could imagine. Empty cages, sized for small bodies. Medical tools that made even hardened soldiers feel sick. But there were no children. Keep moving, Do-hyun ordered. They have to be here somewhere. They fought through level after level, leaving Valori bodies behind them. Do-hyun could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Every second that passed was another second. His daughter might be in pain. He pushed the thought away and focused on the mission. Then they reached the central wing. The door was sealed with the heaviest locks the Valori had. It took 3 explosive charges to break through. When the smoke cleared, Do-hyun stepped inside and stopped. The room was large and filled with individual holding cells made of clear glass. Inside each cell was a child. Human children, still wearing their pajamas from the night they were taken. They looked thin and scared, but they were alive. 347 children, all of them. For a moment, no one moved. Then the children began to cry. Not from fear this time, but from relief. They pressed their hands against the glass and called out for help. Get them out, Do-hyun said, his voice breaking. Get them all out now. The soldiers moved quickly, breaking open the cells and gathering the children. Medics checked each one, wrapping them in blankets and giving them water. The children clung to the soldiers, finally feeling safe after weeks of terror. Do-hyun searched the cells frantically until he found her. Yuna was in a cell near the back, curled up in a ball with her arms wrapped around her knees. When she saw him, her eyes went wide. Daddy? He broke the glass with his bare hands. He did not feel the cuts. He did not feel anything except his daughter in his arms. She was so light, so small. He held her against his chest and felt tears streaming down his face. I am here, he whispered. I am here, baby. I have got you. You are safe now. Yuna buried her face in his neck and sobbed. Her small hands gripped his armor like she would never let go. Around them, other soldiers were having the same moment. Parents, finding their children. Strangers weeping with relief. Brothers and sisters reunited, but there was no time to celebrate. The mission was not over. All units, we have the children, Do-hyun reported through his radio. Begin evacuation. Immediately. The soldiers formed a protective circle around the children and began moving toward the extraction point. Valori reinforcements tried to stop them, but nothing could stand in their way now. They fought with a fury that the Valori could not match. Not because they were stronger or better trained, but because they were protecting their children. Outside, the battle was ending. The Valori defense fleet was scattered and burning. Admiral Soman watched the destruction and felt no joy, only cold satisfaction. The station reports successful extraction, her communications officer announced. All 347 children are safe and heading for the medical ships. Soman closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard as steel. Good, she said. Now find me the Valori High Command. This is not over until they answer for what they have done. Captain Tejo received the news on the bridge of the Indomitable. Around him, his crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had actually done it. But Tejo did not cheer. He thought about all the ships that had been destroyed, all the soldiers who had died, all the families that had lost someone else today. Victory always had a price. He looked out at the stars and made a silent promise. This would never happen again. He would make sure of it. The stealth ships carrying the children docked with the medical fleet. Doctors and nurses rushed to help, surrounding the small survivors with warmth and care. Many of the children had not eaten properly in weeks. Some had marks from the experiments the Valori had started. But they were alive, and they were going home. Do-hyun sat in a quiet corner of the medical ship, holding Yuna on his lap. She had fallen asleep, exhausted from everything she had been through. He stroked her hair gently and watched her breathe. He had done it. Now it was time to make sure no one would ever take her again. The Valori homeworld had not seen enemy ships in its sky for over 1,000 years. Now, the human fleet surrounded it like a ring of fire. Lord Vareth stood in his command center, watching his empire crumble on the tactical display. His defense fleet was destroyed. His best ships were scattered debris floating in space. The humans had done in weeks what no species had accomplished in centuries. His advisors begged him to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Human ships patrolled every escape route. Human soldiers had landed on every Valori colony. The supreme commander of the greatest military power in the sector was trapped. The old scientist, Seleth, approached him slowly. There was no satisfaction in his eyes. Only sadness. I warned you, he said quietly. I told you. They were different. Vareth turned his cold black eyes toward him. They are animals. Primitive creatures ruled by emotion. How did they defeat us? Because of their emotions, Seleth replied. We saw that as a weakness. But for them, it is their greatest strength. A Valori will fight to survive. A human will fight to protect what they love. There is no limit to what they will sacrifice for their children. A communication request appeared on the main screen. It was from Admiral Soman. Vareth accepted it. The human admiral appeared before him, her face calm, but her eyes burning with cold fire. Lord Vareth of the Valori Dominion, she said. You have 1 hour to surrender. All military forces will stand down. All government officials will present themselves for arrest. All scientists involved in the abduction will be handed over to human authorities. Vareth stared at her with hatred. And if we refuse, then we will continue. We will destroy every military installation you have. We will burn every research facility. We will hunt down every ship until there is nothing left of your empire but ashes and memories. She paused. The choice is yours. The communication ended. Vareth looked around at his advisors. They would not meet his eyes. He looked at the tactical display, at the overwhelming force surrounding his world. He thought about the 1,000 years of Valori supremacy, the countless species they had conquered, the great civilization they had built, all of it brought down by an emotion they could not understand. 1 hour later, the Valori surrendered. The news spread across the galaxy in minutes. The mighty Valori Dominion, undefeated for a millennium, had fallen to a species that had been in space for barely 200 years. The Galactic Union Council convened an emergency session, but this time, the mood was very different. Ambassador Jiho walked into the chamber with Admiral Salmon at his side. The same delegates who had laughed at him weeks ago now sat in terrified silence. The council chairman rose on trembling legs. "Ambassador Jiho," he said carefully, "the council wishes to express its deepest regrets for the actions of the Valori Dominion. We also wish to discuss the future relationship between humanity and the Galactic Union." Jiho looked around the chamber slowly. He let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "You told me to be patient," he said finally. "You told me that our children were an acceptable loss for the sake of stability." He let those words hang in the air. "Today, you will learn the truth that every human has known since the beginning of our history." He took a step forward. The delegates leaned back in their seats. There is no force in this universe more dangerous than a parent protecting their child. We will sacrifice everything. We will fight anything. We will never stop, never surrender, never forgive those who harm our young. Admiral Salmon stepped forward and placed a document on the central podium. "This is the new treaty. You will sign it today." The terms were simple. Humanity would receive a permanent seat on the High Council with full voting rights. Any species that harmed human children would face immediate military response without need for council approval. The Valori Dominion would be dissolved, its leaders tried for crimes against humanity, its territory placed under human supervision. No one argued. No one objected. They signed the treaty in silence. The galaxy had a new order. And at the center of it was a simple truth. Never touch the human children. 3 months later, Do-hyun stood in the rebuilt fields of New Busan. The twin suns were setting again, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and pink. The harvest had been late this year, but the wheat was finally ready. Yuna ran through the golden stalks, laughing and chasing butterflies. She was thin still, and sometimes she woke up screaming from nightmares. But she was healing. They all were. Hana came out of the house and stood beside him. She took his hand, and they watched their daughter play. "The memorial ceremony is tomorrow," Hana said quietly. "They want you to speak." Do-hyun nodded slowly. 43 soldiers had died in the rescue mission. 43 families had lost someone so that others could be reunited. He thought about their faces, their names, their sacrifices. "I will speak," he said. "They deserve to be remembered." Yuna ran up to them, out of breath and smiling. She held up a small flower she had found in the field. "Look what I found. It is purple." Do-hyun knelt down and took the flower gently. "It is beautiful." End quote. Yuna looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Daddy, why did the aliens take us?" It was the question she had asked many times since coming home. He always struggled to answer it. "Because they did not understand," he said finally. "They did not understand what you mean to us. Do they understand now?" Do-hyun thought about the Valori homeworld, occupied by human peacekeepers. He thought about Lord Vareth, sitting in a prison cell waiting for trial. He thought about the Galactic Council, terrified of provoking humanity again. "Yes," he said. "They understand now." Yuna seemed satisfied with that answer. She took her father's hand and led him toward the house. "Can we have dumplings for dinner?" Do-hyun laughed. It was the first time he had truly laughed in months. "We can have whatever you want." That night, after dinner, Do-hyun sat on the porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien species were telling stories about what had happened. They would tell their children about the humans, the young species that had shaken the galaxy because someone had made the mistake of taking their young. The stories would grow over time. They would become legends, warnings passed down through generations. And at the heart of every story would be the same simple lesson: never touch the human children. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, parents held their own children tighter that night. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a message repeated endlessly through communication networks and diplomatic channels. A reminder of what humanity had done, and what they would do again without hesitation. We will come for them. No matter how far, no matter how long, no matter the cost. We will always come for our children. Do-hyun smiled and went inside to say goodnight to Yuna. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new struggles. But tonight, his daughter was safe in her bed. His wife was by his side, and his home was whole again. That was enough. That was everything.